So, Alex, this concept of billionaires assuming they have no ideology and appealing to this notion of like, it's gonna be strictly competence for me, and I'm just coming in, and we're gonna put all of people's opinions and desires like. First of all, does this guy get into the room if he says, leave your egos outside? Like, can he even like walk in? But aside from that, this concept of no ideology in politics, right? Like you were talking about noticing something about what Beto and Pete Buttigieg say are their favorite books. And you can't build too much on this, but it is an interesting observation.
Yeah, because we hear a lot about how, and they're both extremely well educated, and they're both clearly very intelligent, but they talk about the books they love, and people who profile them talk about Beto's giant bookshelves and all these other things, and they only talk about novels. They only talk about fiction. And like Pete Buttigieg's favorite book list just came out today or yesterday, and it was 10 novels. And Beto's favorite book is The Odyssey, and everyone talks about but so it's actually not totally, because they talked about presidential biographies. Were the only other thing I hear about Beto reading, which is like, those don't really count. But like they're never mentioning nonfiction books, never mentioning political books about like actual problems facing the country, things like that. Because if I
dynamics that are going on, or it doesn't have to be that they're all reading like Michael Moore and Lying Liars,
totally.
But like there's a lot of books that
Beto's like, there's was Sick Burn by Al Franken on Sean Hannity, but that formed my politics.
But the idea that you want to be president, and like, okay, there's two possible scenarios here, and the implications are not terribly different. But one is that they worked up a list of books beforehand, and that it wasn't just their favorite ones. It was like each book. I mean, and almost in some level, it would be political malpractice not to contemplate like what these books are going to hit.
Do you think if it was purely cooked up, though? I bet they would have thrown at least one or two on that signified to some of the modern political concerns of like the Democratic primary.
Well, but here's the thing, that I think. Maybe they would, or maybe they would. It almost doesn't matter, because that idea is still representative of like they want to their promise as candidates in some level is the polarization, the Strum and Drang or whatever that's called, the everything that Donald Trump represents, like how engaged you have to be in politics.
Yeah.
This is. I represent a release from that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, right. I mean, I think that's it, and I think the idea that if this is the audience you're trying to pitch your campaign to, it is the idea that we can go back to caring about Wolf Hall, and we can go back to talking about our favorite novels, and not having to read the Washington Post every day, or even like we don't even have to read like the new Jim Crow and be worried about that, we can
and that has a big appeal.
It does to a certain part of the Democratic audience.
Yep. If Hillary were president, we'd be at brunch right now.
Yeah.
I mean, on some level, like that is I just distinctly remember that was the big takeaway when Bill Clinton was elected.
Right. After
12 years of Reagan Bush, and it was really just like 12 years of Reagan is what the people felt. Everybody was just so excited to not have them in office. Right. And then like we don't have to pay attention to politics anymore. And that's basically what happened.
Yeah.
And I guess it's going to be interesting to see if that works.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I feel like that segment of maybe that segment of the Democratic base is like features a lot of people who donate to candidates, which I sort of lean towards thinking, but I certainly don't. I certainly think for the majority of people voting for these guys or women, hopefully, the majority of the people voting are not are not part of that demographic. They actually have problems they want addressed, I think. But like the people they're sort of pitching their campaigns to are definitely the ones who are like, our material problems are much smaller than our sort of psychic problems with how the country's being run.
Right. And I think that but there's also, you can also look at the polling of like how many Democrats want compromise.
Yeah.
And that has gone down.
Yeah.
And I think that the question is not so much just about compromise. The question is about like how invested they are in politics, and how aware they are of the dynamic. Because I think like a reasonable person would say, like, yes, you need compromise.
Right. How
If
do these
you are-
things that sound in a normal,
Well, this
free
is-
of context, or normal, mature responses
actually-
to things sound good versus actually understanding what the situation is?
This is actually what's really interesting and why I feel like Beto feels like a throwback in a lot of ways. Is because
Totally.
he's framing everything in these, because it used to be that was how Democrats just talked, where you would ask them what's the biggest problem facing the country today, and they'd be like, well, we can't come together. We can't come together. Like,
There's
that's
no
a big-
blue America. There's no red America.
But if you
Keep
actually
my lines out your mouth, white boy.
But if you asked, I feel like if you asked Democrats now what are the biggest problems facing the country, they're not going to say, well, we can't come together. They're gonna name actual material things for the most part. They're
Hey,
gonna,
Do you think though that there's
We're
still
all just people who really liked our freshman year lit class, okay?
I think there's also though there's among some of them it's not can we all come together, but can we like get back to expertise? There's like a new version of that I see kind of manifesting in a way.
Oh, that's not new.
It's not new, but it's a different version than can we all
that was
get
a Bush.
together?
That was a Bush.
Oh, that's
Candidate
true, right.
That was a-
all
Oh,
time.
truthiness.
Yeah, there was totally a Bush
right,
thing. Was
right,
like
right.
we got to get
Right.
the-
Well, what do you think most Democratic primary voters
But I
would
think
say?
I think that is also
Yeah.
a standard. I think that is like, I mean, look, Democrats want good government.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and as nebulous as that term is, right? They just like I think there was always a sense, particularly with like, the billionaire class and sort of the conventional wisdom, like we all agree. I think like the good faith conventional wisdom pushers were like, we all agree on what the problem is.
Yeah.
We're arguing about how to address it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it has become clearer to more and more people that we don't agree on what the problems are. And that's really ultimately what politics are, right? Like coming up with the solutions is when you bring the solution people first, you are ignoring the fundamental reason why politics exists.
This is the thing that I feel like the argument people on sort of our side have been having with the centrists for forever now is their insistence on, well, we all agree what the problems are, we have different ideas to fix them. And you can look at the entire history of how we've done healthcare policy in this country and say, like, do we agree with what the problems are?
No,
we
don't.
clearly don't agree with what the problems are.
We don't agree what the problem is with immigration.
No, not at all.
And I don't just mean left and right. I mean, I think across the board, we don't have any type of like consensus on what we should be doing in regards to immigration and
Globalization.
globalization. I don't know that we have on trade.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying. Like, I don't think we do.
There's really
We're doing a monetary policy. I mean, like
military.
Yeah, I just.
But also on military.
And there's one way to figure that out. It's through politics.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like
Yeah.
it's not. And like,
well, we have an empty chair right here to represent the American
this
people.
Represents the Democratic electorate on every show.
We're going to say, we all checked our egos at the door, and we're going to figure out what the problems are right now.
we're just gonna figure out. We're gonna figure out the solution. We don't even. Look,
We don't know.
What's the problem? See, no problem. Chair hasn't said a single word about what a problem is. We just didn't hear.
That's why we leave that chair open for the American people.
For the American people.
And
If
that
you
is
like the status quo, say nothing.
And that is what is so facile about what Schultz is doing. It'd be fascinating to me to see like if being on Fox gets him some Republican support.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think that like that Burton and Schmidt were like, you got to go on Fox first.
Yeah.
Because that way it makes it look like you're not going after the
Yeah.
Democratic Party, even though we already told everybody.
Yeah,
you
they
were.
kind of already gave the game away, which was interesting strategically to just tell everyone, oh yeah, we're doing this because we're threatening them in case they nominate Bernie. But because obviously there is some slice of the Republican electorate that is basically the Evan McMullin crowd that is
Right.
like, we've had enough of this guy.
Maybe Evan McMullin could be his running mate. That would be a powerful ticket. That would be a
Steve
powerful
Schmidt,
ticket.
if you're listening.
You know, Steve, and because actually,
I can't wait
He could
to
do
see
a
who
lot
he
of work
picks.
actually, because Evan McMullin really puts to bed a lot of ideas about like the intelligence of CIA officers and their savviness. And Howard Schultz is a walking demolition squad of CEO competence. Although I have to say, we were saying this on TMBS the other night because we always do that Steve Klubik sound drop for basically everything. Remember the Keep It Simple guy, the guy with no neck from Diamond Resorts International?
Oh, yeah,
who
yeah,
looks
yeah.
like an extra in Showgirls. Now, he was on with Stephanie Rule like 8 months ago saying everything that Howard Schultz is saying, like being like, I'm going to cut the money off. Don't mention billionaires anymore. He would be a way better candidate than Howard Schultz because he's an everyman oligarch. And his style would be so much more relatable.
The funny thing is we're already living in the world where the American people decided they wanted to put a businessman in charge.
Right.
We are already living in that world. They did not choose Bloomberg or Schultz. The American people said, yeah, you know what? A business owner, CEO type should be in charge, and we want that one.
Right, exactly. We rejected Mitt Romney, who was that same guy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why, that was George Bush, right? The CEO president.
Yeah.
And there is, I think, more, I think there's probably more, broadly speaking, more appetite for that on the right.
Yeah.
I mean, or center right, maybe the center left as well, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd be curious. I'm sort of fascinated now about who Howard Schultz might pick for his running mate. That's going to be worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
That's the dude. Keep it.
We have another clip.